Hi, welcome to Thoughtful Planning. I'm Honey.
And I'm Santiago. Before we get too deep in today's conversation, please note that the information shared in this episode is for educational purposes only. So let's start with our essential question. What end-of-life options are available for our pets? And how can we make those choices more sustainable and thoughtful?
Great question, babe. All right, so today we're exploring a topic that many people don't think about until they're in the middle of grief, which is what happens after a beloved pet passes away. More specifically, we're talking about aquamation, also known as alkaline hydrolysis, a gentle and eco-conscious alternative to cremation.
And before we get too deep again, let's talk a little bit more about this. So aquamation has been around for decades in scientific and medical fields, and it's used for humans and pets, and it's relatively new here in the U.S. It's environmentally thoughtful. Aquamation uses about 90% less energy than the quote-unquote traditional cremation. It releases no harmful emissions into the environment. It mimics the natural decomposition process. It's just a little bit faster and cleaner. Um, as of early 2025, aquamation is legal for humans in 29 states. Unfortunately, it's not legal here for humans in Texas. However, Texas does allow for aquamation for pets.
Right. So we're honored to have with us Lilia Fuller, the owner of Eternal Waters Aquamation here in Converse, Texas. Lilia offers this gentle option for pets and their families, and she's helping to raise awareness of how we can be more mindful even in saying goodbye. Lilia, welcome to the show.
Hi, yes, thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Awesome.
So let's start with just basics. For those who aren't familiar, can you explain what aquamation is?
Yes, well, as you said, it was a water based process which uses 95% water to 5% salts, all depending on the weight of the pet. It breaks down everything of the body, the fur, the organs, everything except the bones.
What do we do
It's
with the
done.
bones?
Yes, well, when the machine finishes doing its process, it takes about 18 to 20 hours. We then gather the bones by hand, place them in a drying closet where they stay 2 to 3 days tops, and then we can reduce them back to ash form and return those to the family.
Okay.
Cool. So we mentioned that aquamation for humans is legal in some states, but not yet in Texas, but it's available for pets. So could you share your story of what led you to offer this option?
I actually found it when I was listening to a show on YouTube where they were talking about green burials. I immediately thought of just the natural burial where they wrap a body up in linen or cotton, anything natural, and just place them directly in the ground. I also thought cremation. Of course, everyone remembers and knows cremation. But then the person on the video mentioned aquamation, and I really perked up my ears. I thought, what is that? I've never heard of it before. This was about 5 years ago. And so she goes on to explain how aquamation is done with water, eco-friendly, super gentle. And I thought, that's really amazing. So I Googled it, got some more information, and thought that's really interesting. About a year later, it comes to mind again, and I thought, well, I wonder where the nearest aquamation place is to me, because I live in San Antonio. And so I Googled that and found that there was an aquamation location just 2 hours away from me up north, past Austin. And this lovely lady owned it, and I called her, and we talked for about 2 hours. She explained the whole process, answered all my questions, was super nice. And I thanked her so much for her time and told her that someday I would like to open my own place, down in San Antonio, and that I just really appreciated all her help. She then calls me 2 weeks later and offered me to buy her business. She just needed to close it for family reasons. And I spoke to my husband, and we both jumped on the idea. It was really what we kind of clicked with, as far as that would be a really nice thing to offer, for our community.
Wow. Do you have pets?
Yes, I have 2 cats. I used to have dogs, but yeah, we have 2 cats now.
Okay.
We talked a little bit about the process for the pet. Can you talk to us what a pet parent can expect when they use your services from the initial call, and then what happens with the remains of the animal?
Sure. So what we do, we try our very best to make it as least stressful as possible because it's the care of the family and of course the care and respect for the pet that has passed away. So we have them, if they're going to drop off, we have them come in, we give them some time to grieve, say their goodbyes. And once they have left, we take them straight to our back. We don't outsource anything. Everything is done in-house. And so we then make a paw print in clay. We gather fur clipping and place it in a glass bottle. And if it's a cat or a mouse or a bird or any other kind of animal, we might gather their whiskers or gather feathers for them or quills. We've done hedgehogs. And so we gather a little bit of, just keepsakes for each of their pets to make it extra special. And then the pet is placed inside of the machine. Each pet is in a separate compartment, and so their bodies do not mix. And the process then begins. They're placed inside of a stainless steel basket, which has a lid on top that has tiny little holes in it, and the very bottom of the basket has little holes in it so that the water can seep in. As I said, they're in separate compartments. So the water comes in, it already has the salts mixed in, and it just very gently churns the water for about 18 to 20 hours. In that time, it breaks down everything, and then the machine rinses everything one more time, and then we can then gather the bones by hand. Each one has their own tag, and so we can ID every single pet. And then they are placed directly into our drying closet. It takes 2 to 3 days to do that. And once they are completely dry, we can reduce them back to ash form. They're placed inside of a resealable plastic bag, which is then placed inside of a hand-carved wooden urn box, and we gather all of their keepsakes and put them into a nice package with their certificate that the acclimation process was done, and then that is returned to the family.
What do you do with the water?
The water, of course, is in the machine, and it can be drained directly into the water system because it's completely inert. It's perfectly safe, but it can also be used as plant supplement. So then we collect it into a large container, and then it can be trucked out to a field, anywhere with trees. Some people may want a gallon back, which I have had requests of their own pets process, and then they can add it into a plant or a favorite area in their yard. And so they kind of return them back to the earth, but they're still part of that whole circle of life,
When they get that liquid back, like in the gallon,
Mm-hmm.
is there like do you recommend that they dilute it? Like, is it pretty strong that they could
It
just
can
maybe?
be, yes, it is pretty strong because it is all the sugars and the amino acids, everything naturally, of course, from the body. But where they're going to spread it, you do have to consider if it's going to be a small plant, you might just do a cup size at a time, right? If it's going to be a big tree, you might do a cup, and just slowly return it into the ground.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's an open field, then of course you can just spread it out.
Do you partner with any businesses or farms or anything like that with
Not at
the
this time.
water?
We
Okay.
do want that, if anyone is
Uh-huh.
interested, we certainly can do that. We do work with a cremation place where they offer the acclimation, but we do the acclimation for them. So they bring the pets to us.
Okay.
Okay.
They're just further out, so the customers that they get are closer to them, but they can bring the pets to us. So
I see. Okay. So, in the past, we've had our dogs cremated and we were given the option for them to be alone in the process. So it sounds like in what you just described to us that our dog would be in his own compartment.
he would be in his own compartment, but you can request to have them done all by themselves in the machine.
Okay.
Yes, and we have offered that. We have done it for quite a few people who don't want the pet, even the liquid, mixed with any other pets, and we honor that. We can do that for them.
The liquid that's left behind, what's that called?
It's referred to as effluent.
Effluent. Oh,
hmm And
interesting.
it's
Okay.
completely inert. It's very safe for the environment. It's
Mhm.
actually safer than most of the chemicals and things that are, flushed down the toilets and down even sinks that regular cleaners, are pretty strong. And so this is very, very gentle in the environment. And so You can touch it. It won't hurt you. Yeah, even the people who take it home in a gallon, it's not dangerous at all.
If I were to put my dog, let's say a dog about 80 pounds in the container, how much water or effluent um, results from that? About how
Well,
much?
right. The machine itself needs to have a limit amount of water, so it has to fill at least half the tank. My machine holds up to 250 gallons of water. And that's why we try to do multiple pets at a time so that we're still being eco-friendly and not using too much water for one small pet. Again, if the request is made, we can honor that and we go ahead and do just the one pet. There is a process you can do on a tabletop. It's still aquamation. It's just not inside of the machine. And so that can be done by hand, if you will. And that's for the very small pets.
Oh,
Okay.
interesting. Well, speaking of small pets, like what is the smallest pet you've done? And then what's the biggest pet you've done?
Well, the smallest pet I would say is a kangaroo mouse. It was this big. It was adorable. It fit
Oh,
inside of a jewelry box, and it was just precious. And
oh.
the customer, asked if there was going to be any chance of getting Ashes back. And I was positive that we could definitely do that for her. So we did the process. That one was done by hand just because I wanted to make sure that every bone stayed within the nylon bag that we put them in. And I gently did that by hand within a few hours. Because it's such a small body, it was done. And every
Wait,
bone was returned.
when you say by hand, what does that? So it's not going into the container?
Not into the large machine. My machine is called the Pet 400, so it can hold up to 400 pounds of pet. Right? Not with the water. This is just pets. So I can have 2 Great Danes in there, and they would fit inside the machine. We've had a Mastiff that was about 133 pounds. That's the biggest one we've had. But when you have a tiny little one, and I don't want to put them in the large machine, even if it's in its own compartment, it can be done by hand on a tabletop.
Can you talk more about that?
Sure, sure.
Yeah.
So what we have is a large pot that is not too deep, it's just wide. And so the pet, we've done all the gathering of the keepsakes. You have the fur clipping and the paw print and what whiskers that we did gather. And then I was able to put them inside of just a nylon bag, placed inside of the water that already had the salt in it, and I just gently stirred it constantly. I would leave maybe 5 minutes, come back and stir it gently again. After about 2 hours, it was reduced down to just the bones. So I was able to place those just on a drying, on a tray, and just let it dry in the same drying closet. Took one day because those were such tiny bones, and reduced those down to ash form. She was very surprised, but very pleased to have her little baby back. So, like I said, so small.
Oh,
Wow.
that's interesting. I've never heard about what you just talked about. The
Yeah, yeah.
like,
And the other pet that I consider very small because it just is, if you know what an axolotl is, those
I
they
know
call them
that.
slime babies or jelly babies. They look like fish. You can Google it. They are
Yeah, it's
adorable.
like a salamander, right? Kind of
Yes,
sort of.
yes, but they live in water all the time and they have
Yeah,
little
the
gills. They're
little
very cute.
things. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
looks like a
And
Pokemon.
yes, it does actually. So we had a customer come in and she said, I don't even know if you can, but would you try to do an aquamation? And I said, sure.
oh,
So I looked into, as long as as long as it's a vertebrae, if it has bones, we can do it. So again, I did it because it was such a small little thing. I did it by hand and we got bones and returned those to her. She was so happy.
wow,
Oh,
Yeah.
that's interesting.
Yeah.
So, what is the? I guess you said the biggest animal was
the Mastiff,
mastiff.
Mastiff. Yes, it was a very
Yeah.
large dog. Very,
big dog.
very strong, stocky. Yeah,
Wow.
we needed a winch to get him into the machine
I
because
was just
we
gonna
couldn't
ask,
just pick him up.
how did you do
Yeah,
that?
Very,
yeah.
very
We
carefully.
it's like a hammock that I created so that the pet
Oh,
can lay inside, and then we gently put them into the machine, remove the hammock itself, and then we can just put the lid on there, add the salts, the water then fills, and it starts its process.
interesting.
Hmm.
Cool. So,
So, what is the biggest animal that can go in there then?
Well, the largest one I've had was that Mastiff, but you can
Yeah.
fit probably a small pony. as long as it's only 400 pounds. Now, they do have larger machines. There is another one called the PET 550, and so that limit would be 550. But there are larger ones for cattle, for horses, all livestock. Mm-hmm.
Oh, well.
Uh,
Do you
Yeah.
know, is there one close to San Antonio?
Not that I know of. If there is another one, it would be in Dallas or Houston, because I know right now there are 3 locations that do aquamation, and yeah, those are the only 2 I know of. But the whole process actually started. The idea was in Canada, and it was about 30 years ago that it was created by a farmer in Canada. He had livestock that was getting sick, and it would die out on his field, and he was afraid that, if there was a disease going around, he didn't want other animals exposed to it. And so he built this machine, and he did his own processing out there. After a few years, he sold his idea to UT, and they use it now for their, as you said, Mr. Santiago, for their science, to
wow.
I think it's the corpses and the studies that they use the bodies for. That's how they process them and then reduce them down to ash form.
Oh,
That's pretty
interesting.
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, what's the average cost as of, well, we're in March 2025?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The pets we
Mhm.
mostly get are between 4 and about 50 pets.
Mm-hmm.
So on our website, we do have the prices. We want everyone to know exactly what they're paying, and we don't nickel and dime them later with different prices. It's all included in our package. So we're looking between 4 and 20 pounds, about 320, and between 20 and 50 pounds might be about 340. So it's not a huge difference, but it's only because of the salts that we
Mhm.
changed the price just a little bit.
Okay.
Mhm.
Is there a special kind of salt that you use?
Yes, we use potassium hydroxide and sodium hydroxide.
Okay.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Go ahead.
Right. I got another question.
Sure.
Okay. So, why Converse, Texas, instead of San Antonio proper or somewhere else? I was just wondering.
Right. At the time, COVID was going pretty strong. So I landlords were not, their prices were getting really high,
Yeah.
because they had lost, I'm sure, lots of businesses that had to close because of COVID. And so in our search, we had to just keep going a little bit further out. So we are still right next to San Antonio. We're right off of I-35 and 1604.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it is Converse. But
Well, you're talking to a rocket right now, by the way. I graduated from Judson High School, so
oh,
it's kind of
wow.
my old stomping ground, Converse,
Oh, how
Texas.
about that? Yep.
So, but yeah, I was just wondering, if it was, the did you run into any? I guess when you were looking, was there any restrictions that any of the cities or the county put on you as far as what you could do in your facility
Right.
for
Well,
health reasons or anything like
mm-hmm.
that?
Right. As you said, it's most people don't know about aquamation.
Yeah,
So they had a lot of questions. The cities were concerned about the effluent being put into the water system. And so once we explained that it is inert, that it is completely safe and actually safer than most things that go down the drain from a veterinarian's office, the chemicals, the
yeah,
medications, all the blood, things like that, that is a little more it needs more cleaning than does our effluent, because it is perfectly inert and
yeah.
so much safer and easy to go in the water system. So although we had a little bit of delay to open our office because they had all those questions, once we were able to give them that peace of mind, they were like, wow, this is great. So we're able to open our aquamation place anywhere that a veterinarian can have an office.
Okay.
Yeah, so we could be in the city, which we are in the city of Commerce,
Yeah.
but you do not have to be in the outskirts, in the warehouse areas, as a crematorium would be, because of the fire and the smoke, that's constantly coming out. So ours, being so eco-friendly, just needs to have a good office with, water supply, because of course we need to fill our machine.
So going back to the bones, then did you say that doesn't use fire for those bones? You crush them by hand? Or
They're very soft. The combination of the salts and the water, as they gently break everything down, they actually soften the bones so much that is why we gather them by hand, because they are very, very soft. And so we place those on a tray very gently all across so that they are in one layer. And so they dry evenly. And then you can, when they're completely dry, just press on them and they turn into powder. But there are the longer bones, the part, say, of the femur, that center part that is a little bit stronger, that we do have to break down. And it's inside of a cremulator, which basically just breaks everything down into powder form.
do you partner with veterinarians to, so like, for example, when our dogs passed, we went to our veterinarian here in Boerne, and then, we said our goodbyes, and then they had another business come in and get our dog and then do the cremation. And then then we were called whenever, our dog was brought back to the office.
Mm-hmm.
So do you partner like with other offices or people, like, or we would have to get our dog to you? Um, or is there like a special like vehicle that transports the dogs? Like, is there
Mm-hmm.
like a outsourced company or something?
Right. That depends on the veterinarian. We do try to partner with veterinarians. Most of them do have a contract already with the crematorium. So when a pet is brought in, whether it's a euthanasia or they have died and the pet owner brings in their pet, the veterinarian usually just takes care of it through their contact. We
Oh,
have,
okay.
yeah, we have tried to make contracts with them, but like I said, they've already had their contracts with their crematorium, and they do get some money from that. We can't match that right now because our whole thing is about being eco-friendly and being cost-friendly. For me, when I lost my pet 8 years ago, I couldn't afford cremation, and she was this big. She was small. And
Oh,
so she was a Chihuahua. And at
oh.
that time, for me, I couldn't afford to have her cremated. So when we decided we were going to do this process, uh, offer this service for the community, I wanted to make sure that our prices were something normal people could reach.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't make it about the money. We make it about being there for families. And even if they have to make payments, we allow that because we
Oh,
want
wow.
them to have their family member back. And so we offer that for them. The veterinarian does want you to use their system. It is quicker for them, easier, but this is your pet. So
Mm-hmm.
you have the say of what happens to them. Some veterinarians are very nice and they will hold the body and we can come pick them up. So as long as
Oh,
we have that permission from the owner and that the veterinarian agreed to hold the pet so someone else can come pick them up and do their own process, that's perfectly fine. But you do need to ask them and just, request if they can hold the body. Of course, you can just bring your pet to us. There's no charge for that. We do charge if there is a pickup, and that's just to and from the location. We charge mileage. And so it is possible to have you bring them, save that cost as well. But some people don't want to, carry their body to another location. So they have us pick up at the veterinarian's office, and we can either have them pick up the ashes from us at our location, or we can return them to the vet's office.
mm-hmm. That's
Yeah, I
cool.
mean, I think if more people, when they find out about this, especially in the San Antonio area, I pay a fee to have you pick him up, or maybe take him on one last car ride.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Uh,
well, that's a good point.
yeah,
Like, if we were to take a car ride to your place, you don't do the
no, but I mean,
right.
if he passes, you know, I don't want to think about Tex passing,
Mm-mm.
but if when that time comes,
Mm-hmm.
of course, we go to the vet, and if it was that time for him, uh, I think I'd rather do it myself and take him. And that's just me, like
Oh,
take
okay.
him on one
Yeah.
last car ride,
I see what you're saying.
and say,
Mm-hmm.
we're going to take you to your final resting place, baby, and
Mm-hmm.
get him there.
Mm-hmm.
For some
You
people,
know,
that's exactly what they need. They need that last goodbye. They talk to them in the car, or
Mm-hmm.
it's their tribute to taking
yeah,
care of them up to the end.
I'll
Other
tear up
people,
thinking about it.
yeah, other people cannot, and we understand. So that's why we say it's the least stressful as possible. If you need us to pick up, we can certainly do that for you.
Interesting.
I mean, even if, if we were to talk to our vet and say, look, this would be an option that we would pay for, and I know you probably get a kickback from the dudes that cremate the pets, but, charge it like, $50 or whatever extra and do what we want to be done with our pet.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The more
You know,
people that know about it and request it from their veterinarian, yeah, I think the more it'll be known, because we have customers almost every day come in and they've never heard of aquamation. They happen to Google it, not aquamation. They Google, how to take care of my pet that just passed away. Just keywords, of my pet died or things like that. And we come up and they're like, well, what's aquamation? And then they come to us and they're like, I'm so glad I found you. This is just so much more gentle. It's eco-friendly. A lot of them even just say, my dog loved water. It just seems more
oh
appropriate
yeah,
for us to send them away that way. So,
Oh.
it's different reasons, but it's always the gentleness, the water, the care, and of course the respect that we give them, because every pet
yeah,
is seen
Mm-hmm.
as a family member. It is not just an animal to us. Every one of them is very special.
yeah, yeah. Well, right before we got here, he was asleep on my lap, just
Oh.
chilling. When I get home, he's like popcorn. He's just jumping
He's
everywhere.
about a boxer, so he's got a wiggle butt and
And
everything.
he's a
Right.
bouncy boxer, that's for sure.
Oh, how lovely.
Well, Lilia, this has been really a great conversation, very informative. Is there anything else you would like the listeners to know?
It's important to respect the desires of the family.
Well, ma'am, thank you for joining us today.
My pleasure.
Where can our listeners find more information about the Eternal Waters Aquamation?
Well, you can go to our website. It's eternalwatersaquamation.com. And we have videos there that explains the process. It is very clear, and children can watch. They can understand it. It's very family friendly. You can also follow us on Facebook. We recommend that. We do post information on aquamation, how it works, how the water is used, different things. So we like to educate all our customers and potential future customers.
Okay.
Awesome. Well, before we wrap up, let's revisit the essential question. What end of life options are available for our pets, and how can we make those choices more sustainable and thoughtful?
Well, to our audience, we hope today's conversation has inspired you to explore the options available for your pet. Like we've talked multiple times during this conversation, your pet's your pet. It's it's a part of your family. So, you got to find what's best for you and your family. So make sure you subscribe, uh, leave us a review, and share this episode with someone who you think might find it helpful. Until next time, remember, every chapter you write today shapes your legacy tomorrow. Thank you for joining us today at Thoughtful Planning.